All right, what's happened, everybody? It's a Tuesday takeover. I am Jeremy Savage today, so I got to do the Jeremy Savage. What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing great. Um, so today we have a really special interview, and I feel honored that I get to sit in for Mr. Dave Savage himself, and interview literally the best student that I've ever personally had the opportunity to coach. He's also been a huge mentor of mine too. It's so cool when you have like a student and you're coaching them and you're like, holy crap, I'm learning like just as much from this individual as I am sharing as well. Daniel Saw does not need any formal introduction, but because a lot of you may not know who Daniel is because you're all over the place. Like Daniel is just an incredible originator, huge personal production numbers, huge team numbers, huge region numbers. Like he is a unicorn. Like he does it all. He knows how to execute on the highest and highest of levels. So as we go through this interview today and walk through like strategies and scripts, because Daniel couldn't be part of Scriptapalooza. He had a previous engagement. So we're going to go through some of his best scripts, strategies, tactics, things that he is doing with not only his personal production, but as well as how he's teaching and sharing with the greater team. Go through some of those items here today, and you guys are all in for a treat. So if you guys are, just logging on, getting started looking here, make sure you use the reaction buttons. When you see something that like you think is awesome, give a heart, give a confetti, give a rainbow, give a kiss, give whatever you want as far as the type of reaction. So like start playing with that reaction button so that you know where it is. It's at the bottom toolbar. That way, Daniel and I will know, hey, are we doing an okay job? Like, listen, we want validation too. We want praise. We want to know that you're engaged and that you guys are paying attention. You're getting something from this. Also, if you have questions, comments, etc., use the chat screen. Enter them in there. And we'll do our best, of course, to get to them. If we don't, though, it's a great segue for us to create some further trainings, et cetera. So put some questions in there in the chat. I'll be monitoring it from time to time when Daniel is teaching us. So Mr. Daniel Saw, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. How are you doing?
Um,
Great to be here with you.
yeah, man, it's always a pleasure to connect with you. As I said already, one of my favorite all-time students, mentors, executors. Whenever I think of you, I think of execution. Like I've never witnessed to date someone who we talk about something and like in 4 days you have it executed. Like you are like the master of execution. And I think that speaks to the results that you're getting. So if we could set some context for this today before we hop into, the different strategies and scripts and really what's working for you and your greater team, I'd love to know, give us some context around like, how are you guys doing in the market right now? What do your numbers look like for your personal production and your greater team, et cetera? So what does that look like for you right now?
Sure, thanks, Jeremy. Well, right now we have the number one market share overall, both all loan types, purchase, refinance, everything. Right, obviously we're 95% purchase business, but that our purchase is enough to essentially have the highest market share in Central Ohio overall. Now, as far as my personal numbers go, I have year to date closed 292 transactions for 98 million in volume. So strong overall personal production. And as a manager of 40 loan officers, our group has done 1,904 transactions for 540 million thus far. And so we're on track for somewhere in the 850 to 900 million range in terms of total production for the year.
That's crazy. So I want everyone to let that soak in for a second. So if my math is correct, that's over 5 loans per LO. Is that correct? Average.
It's exactly 6.1. So yeah, we're averaging last year. We had a remarkable year last year, right? It was our best year ever last year, where we closed 605 million with 35 loan officers, and we averaged 5.5 closings per LO last year. This year, our average is up to 6.1 closings per LO. This month, we're actually on track for 7 closings per loan officer, still at 95% purchase. So we are certainly taking advantage of the market and doing very well.
That's insane. So I want everyone to think about that for a second. If you're doing less than 6 loans per month, right? That's the average, right? I was talking to Daniel before we hopped on here, And he had, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Daniel, but I always like to call him Saw, by the way. It's just his last name, but I'm gonna call him Daniel for the purpose of this interview. I keep correcting myself in my brain. I'm like, call him Daniel. So like that you had 10 people that did over 10 units, is that right? Or
Yeah,
20
it's
people
very
that did.
common. It's very
Yeah,
common for us every month out of the 40 people that we have to have 10 people do 10 closings out of 40, which is again 25% of our group. And we also, um, in the 2 million plus range is also in that range, anywhere from 7 to 12 people every single month doing 2 million plus. Now, keep in mind, we're in Central Ohio, so our average loan size is 300,000, and so it's quite a good job doing 2 million plus.
a
And
hundred
obviously,
percent. 100%. Like context is always important, obviously, to everyone. But really, at the end of the day, forget where anyone lives, whether you're in California, Texas, New York, Central Ohio. That's a big number. The national average to be considered like a working loan officer produce is one loan a month, right? Like so you are 6 times, 7 times over that. And I can't wait to unpack some of these strategies. So what like
last month, for example, we had 6 loan officers do 3 million or plus. We had 5 loan officers do 5 million or more. We had 2 loan officers at 10 million plus.
love it.
In the overall average was 6 loans per originator.
Absolutely incredible. So, like in the market right now, you're having so much success, not just in your personal production, but also like with your greater group. Like, if you could just unpack, like, what do you think the number one strategy is right now that's getting you these type of results?
Great. So as far as what is working right now is concerned, it's not one thing. It's a combination of strategy, process, and execution, right? And so you know, first you have to have a really strong strategy, and the strategy is relatively similar all the time with some minor tweaks as any obstacles come up, right? The obstacles that come up are actually great opportunities for us to gain market share, right? So in the past couple of years, the main obstacles have been higher rate environment, right? So people are a little bit skeptical about buying because they're not quite sure if they can afford or if they want to
Right.
have a high rate, right? Also, high home values have been an obstacle. Also, low inventory, right? Because even though rates were high, home prices were high, inventory was also very low, right? So those are obstacles. But when I look at those, I actually look at those as opportunities, right? And same thing right now with the NAR settlement, right? That's another great opportunity. And then the next opportunity that's coming up is low interest rates, right? Because low
Right.
interest rates, if you think about that, and I'm not even thinking about the opportunity on the refis, those are a given. I'm talking about the opportunities for picking up market share with gaining new referral partners because loan officers are going to ignore them once they start doing refinances. So I'm looking at the opportunity for market share again, right? And so what's been working is the strategy, the process, the execution, and we can kind of, go into what that strategy looks like.
So, big takeaway already for everyone, and I wrote this down, is that two things. One is that it's about strategy, process, and execution. But under strategy, I wrote down it's always the same or it's similar. It's
Correct.
just this, it's just the little tweaks. And
Please.
Daniel, like what I always see with, I coach a lot of people in our industry too. And even with my own loan officers, like a huge miss that I see consistently all the time is they're looking for like a completely new strategy, a
Yep.
completely new thing. And so they're never being patient enough to execute an actual process with the strategy. Do you
Yep.
agree?
I agree. And by the way, I love that, right? Because that's who, we're picking up market share from. So
Yep.
it's a great situation, right? That people are all over the place because it provides advantage if you have just a simple strategy. If you think about it, Jeremy, the bar is relatively low out there in terms of true, cohesive and consistent strategy. Also, when it comes to process, developing process and process execution, the bar is relatively low, right? So if you're a loan officer that has access to the right strategy, and that's the overall direction on how you're going to, gain referral partners and ultimately deliver, right? And then you have a process on how you're going to ultimately deliver on a strategy, and then you practice your execution. If you just do those three things really well consistently, the only thing that will happen is you're going to win. You're going to win more often than you're going to lose, and you can go from there. But It's really the strategy, the process, and the overall execution.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this strategy. And as we go
Mhm.
into this, here's what I want everyone to know, and write this down if you're watching this, right? Is that what he just laid out was that what's commitment strategy equals commitment. Okay, so you have to be committed to something first that you're going to execute. Now, after commitment comes courage. Like that's the that's the execution of you don't know yet, like how you're going to do it exactly, how it's going to work, how you're going to pivot. But if you don't have commitment first and courage second, you're never going to gain the confidence or the competence, right? Like you're never going to gain any of those things. And we like to do those in reverse order, Daniel. Like I feel like most people were like, we're preparing to prepare because we want to be competent and confident before we like go to market, but you never get there because you have to actually do it in the opposite. You just have to be committed first and then have the courage to follow someone who knows what they're talking about, who has a great process to execute that in the market, which is what you just said. So let's talk about strategies in general. So you
Mhm.
said something I thought was interesting. You said that you think the big opportunity with rates going lower, and of course, me being totally honest always, like, yeah, my brain went to refis like immediately, right?
Mhm.
And you said the opposite. So
Right.
like I asterisk that here on this piece of paper too. So
Yeah.
let's talk about agents a little bit and gaining
Yep.
market share. Like I'm just like you in my market, relatively speaking. I'm number
Yep.
one market shareholder, personal production wise, by 15 million ahead of the second person. Like I'm 92% purchase, right? Like year to date. So we have a lot of similarities. So I would love
Yes.
for you to expand a little bit on,
Mhm.
okay, you guys, rates are going down. Yes, we're going to do refis, but that's just bonus, right? This is what you said without saying it. Yes, we're going to do refis,
Mhm.
but how are you not going? How are you preparing yourself as well as
Sure.
all the people that you lead for the real opportunity with agents and lower rates?
So first you got to think about from the referral partner point of view, right? If you're a referral partner referring business to a loan officer, the loan officer can do one of two things. They can hurt the referral partner or they can help, right? When they're referred a lead, right? So what would it look like if they hurt, right? If how that would look like is the borrower would call the referral partner back and say, hey, after talking to the lender, I decided to hold off. Or after talking to the lender, I need to know what your commissions are, how I'm going to pay for it, right? Or after talking to the loan officer, blah, 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 right? So you want to make sure that after you talk to a buyer, that the buyer is going to be more excited about buying than they were prior to talking to you. If you think about it and just keep it super simple, Jeremy, that's what realtors are looking for when they're referring a client to you, right? You want to move the needle forward. Sometimes realtors don't even think about that because the bar is so low, right? And so they're not even thinking about that. They're just hoping that you don't completely blow it, right? And it's
Right.
very common, right, that loan officers will blow it for the realtor. And so if you think about that, then it comes down to the strategy, right? So how do we make sure that we are helping realtors every time that we speak to their clients, right? And so then the strategy becomes very simple, right? Because what we want to do is number one, we want to get people excited about buying a home. So how do we convey the excitement and the opportunity of buying in terms of the perspective of building equity, building wealth, right? We got to get people excited about buying. Telling stories is really helpful with that, and we can kind of dive in a little bit on that if you want. And then the second strategy is coaching buyers on how to win when it comes to making offers, right? Because in most homes that are favorable, there's going to be more than just one person that is going to be submitting an offer, right? So let's say, for example, when there's 10 offers. If there's 10 offers, what that means really is that there's going to be 9 losers. Do you understand?
Right. Right.
So how do you make sure that your realtor is the winner in every 10 offer scenario? How do you
Yep.
make sure that if there's 5 offers and there's going to be 4 losers in that scenario, how do you make sure that you're the winner in that scenario, right? So that's part of the strategy as well, right? It's really breaking down the elements of a winning offer. So we're really good at doing that. And so when we have those two things in place, automatically when the client gets off the call with us, they're going to get back to the realtor and just say, wow, I feel now equipped to win, right? Or they'll be like, hey, I'm ready to go see a house and make an offer right away, right?
Right.
And so that moves the needle for the agents. When the agent sees that, then they're going to increase the lead count coming over to you.
I love
right?
that. So let's unpack that a little bit. I love that. So I wrote down excitement, right? So Daniel thinks that his primary two jobs, right, from a strategy standpoint, is excitement to buy a house, right? I want to
Mhm.
make sure we get this really clear. Excitement, because you're an extension of the realtor, whether they realize it or not. You don't have to say it, right? You don't have to say I'm an extension of it. You don't have to oversell. You just show it. You get them excited so that the person is calling the realtor back and like is fired up. So excitement was one. And the second one, which is like ultimately the most important, but you have to get them excited first, is like, how do you win? Because those can be uncomfortable things sometimes for clients to accept up front. Like, oh yeah, you're going to have to offer $20,000 more, or hey, you're going to have to go in with no loan contingencies. Here's what that means, etc. But if they're not excited, they're not going to be receptive, right? So I love that he put them in that order, because
Mhm.
if they're not
Exactly
excited,
right.
they're not going to be receptive to something that they could, view as from a fear standpoint, right? And being afraid.
100%.
So how do
Mhm.
you get people excited? Like,
The
what does that
first thing is
sound like?
you have to address some of the elephants in the room, right? So the reasons why people are shy about buying right now is, affordability
Yeah.
concerns,
Yep.
right? And higher rate environment, higher home prices potentially, right? And so you've got to essentially let them know, especially in a higher rate environment right now, that higher rates have actually been a home buyer friend, right?
Right.
Because if the rates were lower, there will be more competition because there's more affordability, right? So really emphasizing that initially, right? And right out the gate, letting them know, hey, this is a great opportunity to buy and get into a home right now without having to have major competition where you have to do massive appraisal gaps and, these significant offers above and beyond list price. So that's number one. And then number two, tell a story, right? For example, we tell a story of one of our colleagues that purchased a home, 3 years ago in Central Ohio for $210,000 with minimum down payment. Actually, utilized the bond product with no money down at all, right? And then recently sold for 350,000. So essentially, that person was paid almost 50,000 a year to live in a home, right? Like if you think in a normal average person, who is saving $50,000 a year?
Right.
Right?
Not
Uh,
very many, not hardly anyone.
not a
Yeah.
lot of people, right? And
Yeah.
that example, depending on the market, could be much greater, right? Bought a house for 500,000, sold for 700,000, paid 70,000 a year to live in a house, right? So when you start talking in those terms, and people are like, "Holy crap! Like I can actually get paid to live here, right? And as long as I can afford a home, then that's going to help me get to that point, right? And then what the opportunity looks like, right? So this particular person then went and bought their dream home afterwards,
Right.
utilized 50,000 towards the down payment, 100,000 towards renovating the home, kitchen, down basement, whatever, right? And so when you start talking about these types of scenarios, then people will start to think about, wow, that could be me.
Right.
That makes sense. And
Yep.
that gets them excited. And that moves the needle for who? For the agent.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Because again, your job is to get people excited more so than they were before after they talk to you.
Yep.
And
And so here I want to pause here because I want everyone to like Daniel's just so good, right? That like I want to make sure that I'm always pausing and unpacking a little bit. So like excitement isn't based on false pretenses. I wrote that down,
Mhm.
right? He's using real stories to create excitement, right? Real examples. It's not made up to sell someone on an idea, right? These are real things. So think about that. We all have dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of stories of success with our clients. And we just take it for granted. We don't share those successes, those wins, and that this is how this person did it, and here's where they're at. That's what creates excitement. Now,
Mhm.
I want to address a question that popped up here in the chat from Anne, and this was a great question because she basically, I'm going to paraphrase it. She says like, "Hey, but what if like someone really can't qualify and they shouldn't buy right now?" That's awesome. Like there is nothing wrong with that. So really what Daniel is really saying is getting someone excited about the idea of
Mhm.
buying, right? About what that looks like. And if it's not right now, that's okay. We
Yeah.
still have to be excited on like, here's what you have to
Right.
do, right? Here's how you can do it. I've had so many people, Daniel, that I mean, 50% of my leads, I can't qualify for what they want. Okay. That's
Mhm.
just the way
Yeah.
it is. It's been that way for a long time for me.
Yeah.
And I accept it. I still treat those people with the same time, respect, energy, etc.
100%. You cannot
And though
pre-diagnose or
no.
prejudge, right?
And those people, though, I want to clarify this. Those people sometimes refer me other people, even though they can't do anything. They're like, because they had a great experience, because they got real information. They felt loved. We talked about a strategy on how they can do it, even if it's not right now. So I just wanted to clarify that is that when you talk about excitement, you're talking about just the idea of being a homeowner. Is that right?
That's exactly right, right?
Yeah.
And not everybody will qualify. And the key thing here is if someone can afford to buy a home and they want and they have that desire to buy, right? And they qualify, right? They can afford the payment, then this is a great opportunity because there's a lot of people that just can't,
Right.
right? But when
Yep.
rates come down, then all of those people come back in, and now you're competing with people that couldn't buy before, but now can, and maybe they'll steal a house off of you,
Yep.
right? And so right now it's a great opportunity because of that reason, right? And it still is. But
Yeah.
regardless, that strategy never changes, right? Because you always have to get people excited and put them in a position where they're more excited after talking to you than they were before. And realtors will notice that, right?
Yes.
It's a pretty significant scenario. I have a great example that just happened. So about 2 weeks ago, I get a random call from a realtor in a market that I've been wanting to get into, and it's probably about 45 minutes away from Columbus. Okay, this is the number one realtor in that market. Okay, and the realtor sent me a text message and saying, "Hey, I'm having problems with my lender right now. I'd like to talk to you about an opportunity to work together." Right. And so I immediately call and I said, listen, sounds like you have a couple of things you want to talk about. Number one, you need immediate assistance because the lender that you're working with is dropping the ball. So I'm going to address that immediately for you. And then number two, you want to talk about having a long-term partnership that we can work together for many years to come. Does that sound about right? He's like, yes. Great. So the first step is I'm going to provide you with immediate support. Here's what that looks like. We're going to call clients immediately, follow up immediately, provide them, go through a loan consultation process, make sure that they are excited about buying and equipped to make strong offers. Does that sound good? Yes. And then he sent me a lead in the very first day, right after having that conversation. Okay. That particular client, okay, we obviously called right away, updated the agent right away. We could have pre-diagnosed the client because the
Right.
client had some red flags that we knew ultimately the client was not going to qualify. But instead of pre-diagnosing and just telling the realtor that the client doesn't qualify, we actually went through and took a full application, right? And provided the buyer with very specific steps on what they have to do to be able to qualify in the future, right?
Yep.
That client then, so we provided the update, right, and moved on, right? He continued to send leads. The client was pleased, right? Provided the realtor feedback that we did a great job. Well, last week, that client sent his aunt as a referral to our team. That aunt actually qualified and had not yet spoken to the realtor who had originally referred that client that didn't qualify. So now we were able to then pair that client with that realtor. And that was the very first lead that realtor sent to me. So I was able to call the realtor afterward and just say, this isn't common, right? That we will get a referral right out the gate on your first lead, but that gives you an idea of how many leads you have missed by not having worked with me previously.
Okay. Time out. Did you hear that script, you guys? Uh, that was gold because of multiple things. One is that I think that we would default to needy and we're awesome. Like, hey, this is what we do with all of our realtors. We always refer black. He set right actually, he opened up that script callback to that agent with like, hey, this isn't common. Set the right expectation, like right up front. I wrote that down. I wrote expectation. Like he said, but then he delivered, right? Hey, this isn't common.
And I planted
It
the
does,
seed.
right? And then he got to explain though how he did it. And then he got to plant the seed to the realtor of like, think about like how many opportunities you might have missed by working with someone else, right? He created stickiness. So
Yeah.
that is just a great example, you guys, of how you can communicate in truth. Like the worst thing that Daniel could have done in that scenario, which he didn't. And I've done this like in early on in my career, we all did this. You guys remember, hey, I'll refer you, you refer me. Like we do that thing, right? And we know it's not true. Like it doesn't happen that way for us like all the time, but we do create an infinite more opportunities if there's a process behind how we try to do generate referrals, right? And do get excited. So he communicated that so flawlessly. And now he has stickiness, right?
Mhm.
Now he has stickiness with this agent who's also a really big agent.
It's a big agent, and an agent that had previously worked with one loan officer for the past 5 years, right? And so it is stepping outside of his comfort zone, right, to work with me, right? Because by default, he has all these processes that always lead back to that same loan officer. So this is an agent that is now very happy, fully onboarded, right? And will likely work with us forever,
That's
right?
great.
It'd be
I'm going to
difficult.
share with you guys like another example here. Okay. So, Daniel, let me know if you can see my screen. I'm going to start to share it and it's not sharing the right one, of course. So, I'm on a new Apple computer. Let me hold on. Give me 1 second. So, if I can't bring it up, I'll tell you as I'm bringing this up, what I'm wanted to show you is that how you can use like Edge and Trust Engine, like Mortgage Coach, like total cost analysis with people that don't qualify, right? So in this scenario, like I have someone who basically like doesn't qualify. They wanted to buy a $600,000 house. And I still took the time to show them, here's the $600,000 purchase, and here's what the payments are and the cash to close, etc. And then from there, I put next to it in the second column, here's what you do qualify for though right now, which was 190,000, you guys. It was totally way less, right? So I went and I was able to show that's what caring for and creating excitement is. Maybe they'd be a little disappointed, but they didn't know. They're first-time home buyers that make $39,000 a year and there's one income and they were just like, "Hey, I want to invest in real estate and I found this house that I think's cool." Right? Like, and so, but I still took the time to chat with them, understand what is your income? Do you have any other monthly payments? Hey, I'm going to model something for you to show you what a $600,000 purchase would look like, but also maybe something that would be more affordable, right? Like within your purchase price range. Like she didn't know. She didn't know that a $600,000 purchase price would be 107 DTI, right? She doesn't know any of those things. So I love to use the mortgage coach like total cost analysis to educate people. And of course, I included the realtor on it. And the realtor was like, "Thank you so much for taking your time to do that." And then the realtor's apologizing to me. "I'm going to send you better people. I'm so sorry. I hope that wasn't a waste of your time." No, it's not a waste of my time at all.
And Jeremy,
And,
what you did there is you created a very clear roadmap to the customer, right? You
yep,
explained what it would take to afford a $600,000 home,
right.
right? And you never know when people are motivated to buy, in many cases, they will figure out a way. And for example, we never know if they're going to have an aunt, that is excited and maybe wants to help, right? Or a rich
Yep,
uncle, or a family that a member that would be willing to step in and co-sign, right?
yep,
We never know those things, and I explain these to my team all the time, right? Don't pre-diagnose, don't prejudge, just take the full application and figure out, just provide the full, diagnosis back to the customer. And if they want to, if they're motivated enough, they'll find a way, right? But you're providing a roadmap, and that's really clear.
yeah. So can you see my screen okay now?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is the example of what I just walked you guys through. This is what she thought she wanted, and she doesn't have any money for a down payment, you guys. She has 10 grand saved total, right? So like I just showed her what she wanted to see. It never hurts to show someone what they say they want. And then I showed her, here's what you qualify for. And exactly what Daniel said is what I proceeded with after. I was like, listen, you can still purchase this 600,000. We need to figure out, is there someone that can buy it with you, right? We need to figure out, can you come up with a larger down payment? If you can't, that's okay. This is where you're at right now. So here's a script for everyone, okay? I always tell everyone that doesn't qualify, either period or for what they want, that, hey, we don't believe in the word no. We just believe in not right now. We just believe in not right now. So
Yes.
let's come up with a great plan. Let me tell you 3 things you can do to move towards that goal. That's how you create excitement that Daniel's talking about, like in the person. Hope is a terrible business plan. It's a great engagement tool, though. Okay. So hope is not a great business plan in your own business. Like, oh, I hope it's going to get better. But hope for people is a real thing. And you have to show them so that they can have hope how they can do stuff when they don't think they can. So I'd like to transition a little bit here, Daniel, into, you mentioned realtors, you mentioned this big realtor you're working with and whatnot. Like what are you doing right now with agents when it comes to the type of questions and whatnot you're asking them? And how big does this NAR settlement really play into it? Have you seen any effects at all in your market, or has it been just something that it doesn't really matter?
That's a really good question, Jeremy. And so I actually have been watching very closely the impact of the NAR as it relates to our team, right? So since NAR, which is we're 23 days in right now. I don't know if you knew this, but we're 23 days in, right? In the past 23 days, we have received 243 contracts.
Okay.
Okay. Out of the 243 contracts, what we found is that 94% of those contracts, 3% commission paid to the buy side
Right.
agent,
Yep.
no issues. So business as usual, primarily, right? 4%, we saw a reduced buyer agent compensation in somewhere in the 2%
Yep.
range.
Yep.
And then 2% had a split where the buyer was picking up a portion. So the buyer agent was still getting paid their 3%, but the buyer was paying maybe a 0.5% or a 1%, and the seller was paying the rest, right? But that only occurred in 2% of the 243 contracts we've received in the past 23 days, right? So the major impact we've seen right now is just business as usual, right? Nothing really has changed. And so now so this presents a couple of opportunities right now, right? One is common mistakes that loan officers can make addressing NAR settlement. And that becomes our opportunity as loan originators to pick up more market share, right? Because I'm looking for ways where we can create opportunities to pick up market share. So it's very straightforward to be able to do that because agents are wondering, loan officers are not providing great direction. And at the end of the day, while it has still been business as usual so far, that could change, but it's still in the back of realtors' minds, right? When they're getting their broker agreement is signed, right? And so the overall impact has been very little in terms of production and in terms of buyer compensation. But we are seeing, some reduced comp and some split payments there.
So I love that. Now that could, of course, change. Like, I always want to make sure that, like, I give context to everyone. I personally have been saying and will continue to say that I do not think this is going to have a significant impact on anyone that knows how to communicate, right? Like, I really, really don't. Now, that could change, of course. That could change, like, in the future or down the road. But as of right now, let's call it this year, next year, I don't see this being a huge impact on any way that a real estate agent does business. But those that can't communicate it when it comes to a buyer broker agreement are going to lose people left and right. Like, they are going to lose people. So he said 94% business as usual, 100%, right? Like by the last. Then he said 4% have basically, like, they took a slightly lower commission from the seller, right? Compensation wise. And then 2% is like that split where maybe the buyer paid 1% of the 3% because the seller was only offering 2. Now, what I
Right.
love about this so much is that in all the contracts that I've looked at my personal production since this went into effect as well, I have not so far. Seller has paid everything, but I have seen multiple contracts with less commission. So
Mhm.
here is the opportunity for all of you, okay, with your real estate partners, right? Is that it hasn't really changed yet on who pays the buyer, the whole fear about the buyer paying. It has changed their commission though. like these people are getting less, right? This 4% is getting less, and that could grow. That
That could
probably
grow, yes.
will grow, right? So what is the opportunity there then? The opportunity is to talk about how to educate on how they get compensated if the commission isn't the full amount, right?
Bingo.
So can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So we're running the script right now, and we're getting tons of meetings left and right, right? Essentially, you can just call any realtor, right? First of all, I have to make sure all your active agents have heard from you in terms of like what your strategy is to make sure that they get fully compensated on contracts, right? But your agents that you don't work with, right? All of the agents that are great in your market, they're wondering, how this may impact them, right? And at the end of the day, they want to know what that looks like from the lending side in terms of how lenders can support them in this scenario, right? So we're calling agents and simply asking this question. Has your current lender gone over the different ways that we can ensure that you get always paid, that you're going to be paid 100% of the buy side commission while mitigating out-of-pocket cost for your buyers?
I love that.
And in
Say it
many
one more time.
cases,
That's a great script. Say it one
yeah.
more time.
So,
That's awesome.
so has your lender reached out to you to go over the strategy to mitigate out-of-pocket cost to ensure that you get paid 100% of the buy side commissions every single time? Because we have a very specific strategy on this. I'd love 15 minutes of your time to go over this. Do you have 15 minutes later today or tomorrow to jump on a Zoom call and talk about this? And
That's so
again,
good.
and that same script could be sent via text message to 300 realtors. And so you get the low hanging fruit immediately, right? You'll get 30, 40 responses immediately saying, I want to know what your strategy is.
Yep.
Boom. Those meetings are already converted, right? And then you talk about what you're, and then we've come down to a 3-point strategy, right? Which is again, the same. Remember what we talked about early on. You still got to get people excited about buying. You still got to get them, confident on how to win on multiple offer scenario. And now you have to help them understand on how they can mitigate the out-of-pocket expense in a scenario where they could be left with a portion of the commission to be paid. Now, you don't bring that up on a conversation because why? The most common mistake loan officers are making right now is asking a new buyer, how they are what are their expectation on how they will pay for real estate commissions, right? Like if you look at a bank loan officer, right, that has no direction whatsoever, they actually may ask that question. And
Right.
imagine like what we talked about earlier, right? When a realtor refers you a client, you can either help or hurt.
Yes.
Imagine a realtor getting a call back after referring you as a loan officer. And then the buyer says, hey, I just got off the phone with the lender. Something I forgot to ask you is, what is your compensation and how am I going to be paying for that? Because he needs to know so that we can figure this out on the lending side.
Right.
Imagine how big of a turnoff that would be for a realtor to get that call, right? So it's really important that you don't address that up front unless you're asked, right? Because it's really the realtor's job to talk about what their compensation is. Now, what you can do and should be doing is helping realtors on their overall presentation of their value proposition, how to make it super simple so that getting buyer agent agreement signed is easy, right? So that you're providing value to your realtor partners on how to do that. And then when you're asked that question up front, there's a simple answer. Hey, Mr. Buyer, great question. I'm glad you asked. As a matter of fact, agent compensation has always been priced into the home. Nothing has changed. That continues to be the case. There's just a little bit more transparency in the front end as it relates to that. But not, the vast majority will always be priced into the home. It's very rare that you would be stuck with paying the agent compensation, but we will make sure that we have processes in place to mitigate that if that ever came to surface.
Yeah, I love it. So what the strategy, right? And like where this is, I love this so much
And
is that,
realtors want to hear you
yep.
say that to them.
Yep.
Realtors want to know what your objection, what the rebuttal is, right? That you're putting forward, right? Because otherwise they're blind right now. They're referring a buyer over to you as a lender and they have no clue what the hell you're going to say to them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important that you call realtors and just tell them, no, hey, Mr. Realtor, just want to let you know really quickly, this is our process right now when we're asked the question, right?
Yep.
We're just going to let them know that has always been customary, always priced into the home. Everything is the same right now, just a new form to sign in the front end to provide more transparency, but business as usual, no change.
Yep. I
Right.
love it.
That's what
And
they want to hear from you because
that's what they want to hear from us, you guys. Like
goodness, Daniel, that you
he's
guys are
crushing.
smart.
This is a home run. I don't want you guys to miss it. Is like that. I say something super similar. Like we have the same outlook on this, which I love, Daniel. It doesn't surprise me, but I'm happy that it's the same. Is that like I've had it brought up by a handful of buyers, And it's because the realtor, they don't talk about it. Okay. And that's okay. But the way you respond is critical. Right.
Good.
And so for me, it's super simple. I want to not only get people excited about buying home, but excited to be working with the person that referred me. Right. So I had one, Michael is the agent's name. And I had the client ask me when I sent them a total cost analysis with the cash to close. And their question was, hey, like, does this include the compensation to my realtor? Like they asked me, I have to answer it, right? They asked me the question. And here's how I answered, and you can all copy this, right? Is that I said, hey, yes, this includes everything. Michael will always tell you on any property in advance so that because we have strategies just in case the seller is not paying buyer compensation. So he is the best of the best. He's such a great communicator. Yes, this includes your total out of pocket. And if anything changes with a specific property because of the seller, he's going to go over that with you, as will I. So you have nothing to worry about. This includes everything. And they
Yeah.
literally like, oh, okay, great. That's all they said. They were like, oh, okay, great. Right. So make them look better. Tell them what you're saying to the clients when it's asked, which is the strategy that Daniel just shared, which is fantastic.
Really
And
simple.
Yep, very, very simple. So I want to pivot to another place here because we could talk for 5 hours, of course. And I know that we talked about rates going down, that the opportunities with the agents, we discussed that a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, what about refis though, right? Like and if I understand correctly, you're also launching like within your team and your organization, like the Trust Engine LO app, right? Like the app
Mhm.
like that has all of this stuff built into it, which I'm so jealous. Like I have to get on that bandwagon as well. But so how are you preparing for these refi discussions and how do you envision yourself like executing this, Trust Engine app?
So first of all, the Borrower Intelligence Portal from Trust Engine is a critical new initiative that we have implemented, that we're in the process of finishing up the implementation right now. Ultimately, what we're doing with that is just helping our loan officers have additional competitive advantage by being able to identify opportunities before it's too late and be in front of the customers before there's actually an inquiry on their credit or before they have actually gone and searched, to buy a home and so forth, right? So it's a really incredible platform that gives you specific insights where you can be ahead of the curve as it relates to acting on a specific opportunity. So that has been, we're really excited about that. We're already up and running and piloting, a small group, but we are in the process of implementation for all of our loan originators. So again, super exciting. It's basically, sales boomerang on steroids. And that's what this is. So super, super excited about that. Now, as far as the strategy as it relates to refinancing, again, I have 2-point strategy on that. Number one is extreme focus on the realtor. Market share is going to be a very important piece because if you think about this, rates are coming down, right? You've got a lot of loan officers that have been resilient, up until now, just waiting for this moment, right? And maybe they've had the 3 or 4, maybe potentially a couple of good relationships with agents, right? And as soon as they get busy with refinances, they're gonna, send out the finger, to the real estate agent, right? And we're gonna open the arms.
Yeah.
And so we need to be very vigilant on that, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not sending fingers, right, to our partners, that we are purchase first. We're real estate agent first, right? And we're going to always have their back no matter what. And that means we're going to close loans in 15 days no matter what. We're going to get clients excited to buy, get them in a position to win. That's not going to change, right? And then as it relates to the refinance, is just keeping it extremely simple when it comes to the the options process, right? So obviously we know a lot of people have been on, in the past 2.5 years, people have been on mortgages that are 6.5%, 7%, 7.5%, right? So have a strategy and a process to where you can take their previous loan that you did and immediately break it into a 3 or 4 points, like 4 option structure, where it just basically says, hey, this is what your new rate will be, new payment, total savings, and then keep it simple, right? without having to actually go through the trouble of building out files in Encompass or
Exactly. I
all,
agree.
gotta be able to pitch, first with the assumption that they qualify, right? And you can do that in mass scale, right? Like we developed a process internally that automatically can do that on a on demand, right? We can literally select bar, send options, right?
Right.
And so it's really, really easy, right? To be able to get people to just select, oh, I want option B, and then boom, you just disclose, close, right?
Yep.
Keep it super simple, because if there are, opportunities where you're going to have, dozens of customers to serve, right? Make sure that you are able to serve dozens of customers and not just 5 of them,
Yep.
right? And so you got to keep it simple. You got to have a strategy that doesn't take a lot of time, right? How can you actually pitch and sell in maybe 20 minutes or less, right? Because all you're doing right now is a rate reduction primarily,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so just keep it simple.
Guys, how good is Daniel Saw and Jeremy? What an incredible conversation this is. And I want to make sure you know exactly the app that Daniel has rolling out, the Trust Engine Loan Officer app. And when I show this to you, think of the competitive advantage that mortgage professionals, data-driven mortgage advisors like Daniel Saw are going to have when they have Trust Engine monitoring their database for eligibility and propensity. That we're predicting not only refis, but we're predicting purchases and good reasons for loan officers to call those consumers. And I want you to think, when you look at this app right now, I want you to think just how powerful this would be to show to a real estate agent. We're like, hey, realtor, all the leads that you give me, I'm monitoring for eligibility and propensity to not just only do refis, but who's a good move up buyer? Who's a good move down buyer? Is there a first time home buyer? And then of course, guys, we got a lot of rate and term refis that are going to be triggering. So Daniel and team will have this app rolled out. Every time there's a data signal, easy to email, easy to text, easy to call, some coaching, some scripting. Hey, exactly what to say when they call, exactly what to say when they text. So for all you managers out there and for all you loan officers, let your leadership team know that you want the Trust Engine Loan Officer app. Integrates ongoing integration with MortgageCoach. All the data we have on that consumer, so you can have an incredibly effective conversation. Everything that you have in your CRM, everything that we have for monitoring for eligibility and propensity, who's most likely to want to buy, sell, refinance real estate right now in your mobile app. Literally 30 seconds to a minute, and you can be texting, calling, emailing, and having a great mortgage coach conversation. Anyways, let's get back to Daniel and Jeremy.
Yeah, so I'm going to add on to this, and I love that what he said. So I believe in this as well, and I've been executing this mindset of it as well. Is that rather than making people fill out a whole loan application, let's see what you qualify for. It's too much work. Like, just take 5 minutes in advance and go, oh, okay. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, talked to a client, right? I shot him a text that just said, hey, I told you I'd be monitoring your interest rate, right? It looks like it's a great time for us to execute on the plan. Are you more interested in saving $290 a month or $225,000 in interest over the life of the loan? That's what I said. And they were like, oh God, both seem great. Like, when can we chat? That's literally what they said.
So
I
you already
did.
sold. The loan is already sold.
The
And that's
loan
the
is
point.
already sold,
That's
so
exactly it. So like the
yeah.
first call should be, as a loan officer, you have your list of past customers, right? And you know if they're at 7% and now you can offer, let's say, a 6%.
Yep.
You already know if they qualify for that, what the new payment will be and what the total savings will be. So you can simply call and say, hey, Johnny, this is Daniel. I helped you on March 1st of 2023 with your refinance. Right now, rates are coming down quite a bit. And let me just ask you a question. If we're able to save you about $400 or so per month and $60,000 over the life of the loan and help you skip a couple of months of payments, would that be beneficial to you? If the answer is yes, then the sale just took place. Did you see how it only took me 60 seconds to sell that loan?
Yeah.
Because now I just call them and then I confirm, hey, here's your option. You're going to save $415 a month. You're going to save $71,000 over the life alone. Your next payment is in December. I just have a few forms you need to sign. Let me know if you have any questions.
It's so simple. I love it. I love it so much. Now, something that we're doing too, Daniel, because I get a lot of questions from this from my LOs. They're like, well, what if we all know the interest rates are going to go down further? Like, why wouldn't we just wait? And here's the reality, okay, you guys, is that we don't know. That is the truth. We think, and there is a high probability, okay, that it will go down. But does anyone remember May 10th, 2023? Well, if you don't, that was the date that interest rates were supposed to start dropping like 1%, 2023. And what did they do? They did the opposite, right? They did
Here's
the
what I
opposite.
tell, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is something that some of my loan officers will bring up sometimes, right? And here's what I say: hey, listen, if somebody can save $400 a month right now, 50,000 over life the loan, don't rob them of that option.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Because
Yep.
that may not be there anymore. What if something happens and they miss a payment on a credit card? Now they don't qualify at all.
Right.
So now rates are lower, but they don't qualify.
Yep.
You just screwed them over, right? So what I say
what
is,
you can do too, just so you guys know, what he's saying is right. I believe you can take a profit, take a profit. You can always take a profit again in the future, but you don't know if they're going to be able to in the future. So always work in the now. And then if you want to vision cast for the client, like I'll give you an example. This is a client of mine who is currently at 7.375%. She's refining right now at 6.1%. She's bringing in cash. She wants to buy down her principal, okay, on this. And this is it, right? So she's saving right now $790 a month, okay?
incredible.
Like compared to where she is right now. I vision casted for the next opportunity, right? I don't know if she'll have a job when this happens, but I'm casted the vision to eliminate the objection of, but what if they go lower? I said, listen, here's what's great. When they go lower to 4.99%, we're going to redo this again for you, and you're going to save an additional $600 a month, right? Like, so you can preempt, right? Like all of these like objections just by showing this is what you can do right now. It makes sense to do this right now. If there's an opportunity in the future and you still have your same job and everything is great, et cetera, and you qualify, then this is what it's going to be in the future potentially as well.
What was the term that you used to
Vision
cast?
Casting the vision for them, like cast the vision for them on what makes sense right now, as well as what could happen in the future. And I always use the word could, because I was wrong, you guys, in 2023. I had shirts made. I have like 20 of them that literally say 5, 10, 23. That's all it says across the chest, because I was wrong, right? Like we all were wrong. The industry was wrong. So we're not always right, but what is right is what they can do right now. Right.
I love what you just said right now. And what you just mentioned, the vision cast, is something that's going to complement my process even further. So I thank you for that, Jeremy.
Yeah.
But that's incredible, right? You got to keep it simple. You shouldn't rob people of the current opportunity that they have, if they do in fact have an opportunity, right? And we have others that maybe they are at a 6.5% rate right now, that going to 6% maybe doesn't make sense yet.
Right.
But
Totally.
you have to gradually, you have to look at your pipeline of past customers right now and make sure you're helping those that can actually benefit right now.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. Like
the vision cast is critical. You can do that right up front. Somebody asks, do you do this in advance, during that first call? Absolutely. Vision cast right away.
Yep. I do it immediately. I always say, here's what you're going to save right now. Would you like to save again in the future? If you pose anything in a question, it's more powerful, just so you guys know. So it's like, here's what we can do now. Would you be interested in, or would you be open to saving again in the future? No one is going to say no. Everyone's going to say, well, yeah, how? And then you just set them up for you to be the expert, right? Would you be open to saving now and in the future? Yeah, I would be. Okay, great. So, you guys, we still got, 8, 10 minutes here. Something I would love for you to touch on is around open house strategies. So for your group and people that are doing open houses, like how do you have a strategy around that? Because the theory right now, at least, right, is that people that are coming in that have to sign something saying that they're looking at the open house liability waiver. The theory is that there's going to be more qualified people, less looky-loos. coming into open houses. It's a theory. I don't know if that's reality yet or not, but do you have a strategy around open house strategy on how to help real estate agents get more people to sign more broker agreements and basically take a contact to a contract in the future?
I think the main thing on the open houses is creating, opportunities for agents in terms of their preparation for the open house, right? Leveraging tools such as MortgageCoach, right, to have, payment scenarios, right? And with the future, the vision casting, right, of what it would look like later, potentially you could have that on a MortgageCoach, but having, payment scenario flyers, that's been in place for a very long time. Just getting them done, getting them out to your realtors, believe it or not, that's helpful. Having presentations for them on how to get people to sign buyer broker agreements. It's really important, right? What does the home buyer journey look like? Do you have something that is a visual aid that you can provide to realtors so that when a customer comes in, they can share that here's the home buyer journey. Here's what it would look like if you bought this house, but this may not be the house for you. These are what we would look at. And here's my strategy on how I find homes either through the MLS or outside of the MLS to serve your needs, right? So having both visual aids that help them convey their overall value proposition, right? But also having scripts on how they leverage the visual aid. Because if you just give, I think a lot of loan officers, they'll do these like open house kits or payment scenarios and this and that, assuming that the agent will have the skill set to deliver. So if you provide the actual script to go along with it, and you have a call and you prep and you just do a little role play, right? You play the agent and say, hey, this script has been proven to work, right? What do you think? And a lot of times they're like, wow, this is great. I really appreciate it, right? And again, at the end of the day, guys, realtors just want to know that you care, right? Like another great thing to do with realtors right now is talking about, what you can do to help them finish the year strong in Q4 and how to set them up for success in 2025. Like just asking that question, moves the needle because that comes across like you actually care about them, which you should care about them, right? But that makes them feel like you actually do, and you're putting action behind that.
What I love that he just shared, you guys, I want everyone to catch what Daniel said, though, around the open house specifically, is that we can't assume, he didn't use these words, this is my takeaway. We can't assume because we give someone a flyer that someone that comes through an open house that has a question is prepared to answer that question, right? We can't assume that. So his solution was, hey, quick chat about it. Like, here's what this means, right? Like if someone does have a question, you don't need to know everything, but here, like you can rebuttal with this script of yes, these are just scenarios that are generic, right? Based upon like a 5%, 10%, and 20% down payment. Everyone's scenario is unique, but this gives you a really good idea of what payments could look like. What I would recommend ultimately is that you figure exactly like what your scenario is with your down payment and your cash to close. And whether it's this house or another house, at least you'll be 100% set up. I would love to introduce you to Daniel. He's so great.
That's exactly it.
There you go, right there. I just made that up like that. There's the script.
You're exactly right. That's the realtor, right? And the key when you role play with the realtor on potential visual aids that you're supplying at the open house and you explain what those mean, ultimately what you're doing is you're helping the realtor just send a lead to you, right? Because they're going to sort of understand what it means and they will have an idea on how to explain the visual aid, but then they will say, but I want you to actually speak to Daniel because he can take it a little bit further, right? And help you truly understand this.
So two things real quick as we're getting towards wrapping up, and I would love to hear Daniel's last thoughts of like how you guys can do more business, etc. right now. One is that in the chat, someone was like referencing like, well, hey, how can you say that around like if the borrower doesn't know if they're going to pay or not? We don't know if they're going to pay or pay. You're right.
Until the offer's made, yes.
Right. Until the offer's made. Like, that's true. That doesn't matter. We can't just over-educate someone to create fear. All we have to do is have solutions. So I'll give you a quick visual aid as an example. I sent this out to all of my realtor partners when the NAR settlement came through, and it was just called NAR settlement 4 ways that buyers can make offers on a $700,000, right? And I showed business as usual, seller paid, I showed, it says financed into the loan. That's just to get their attention. I know legally we don't say that, but if someone puts less money down, right,
Yep.
and then they have the money to pay the agent, it's the same thing. Right.
Correct.
So
Lower down payment.
that's what that means for context. I've had a lot of people go, you can't do that. You guys are overthinking it. Okay. If someone has 10% to put down, but they qualify putting 7% down, they're fine, right? They're just going to
Right.
put 7% down. So I show them this. I show them that, hey, if you wanted to, finance it into the price, that means offer over, right? This is what it means in monthly payments. Or if you just had to pay it all in cash, here's what it looks like. So I'm arming my agents with the education of that there are solutions no matter what. Right?
Excellent.
Like don't worry about it. Now, the other thing that came up here, Daniel, and I have an answer to this. I'd love yours, is how can we get referrals? Like, what's the best way to ask realtor partners for refinance referrals? And I'm really good at this. I would love to know your take on that.
I have not necessarily prioritized that. So I would love to get your take on
Okay,
it.
great.
I would be somewhat cautious in doing so. Just, the first thing that comes to mind, right, is that, you're asking realtors, for potential refinance opportunities. It could come across as though, you're not trying to generate leads for them, right? You're
Yep.
just looking for more ways to get more leads from them. So just be cautious on how, right? But certainly, realtors are going to be a great source of refinance leads as well. So I would love to hear your take on
I
this.
love it. You just teed me up. We didn't discuss this in advance. So what he said is true. So here's how you do it. Okay. So what I want to do is be valuable to the realtor, right? And realtors are typically very bad at reaching out to their database and to their past clients with good, real information. I'm not talking about like the recipe cards, like and stuff like that, where they can make an apple pie. I'm talking about real, like finance, real estate, real shit. Okay. So like this is your opportunity to go, hey, just so
Love
you
it.
guys know, like here's what I would be doing with all of my past clients. I'm happy to make the video for you or just copy my video and send it out to everyone that you've closed in the last 2 years and let them know that, hey, if you guys don't know, interest rates have gone down significantly. And I told you that I would be your realtor for life. And I think that you should look into, right, if a refinance makes sense for you to save money monthly, or if it makes sense for you to look at buying a new house and selling your current one. So you arm them with the video. Hey, just use my video if you want, or hey, just copy this script, right?
Love
And
that.
send this out. And they then, you're not saying, and then send them to me, but you say that, hey, I'd be more than happy to chat with any of the clients that do have questions about it. I'd be more than happy to be a resource if the opportunity presents itself. But this gives a great opportunity for you to touch base with your database with real information, and that maybe someone does need to refinance. You can create new conversations with your clients of what's going on in their life. Or you probably are going to find a couple opportunities where rates are going lower and people can sell their house and buy a new one. So like that is the strategy for me when it
I
comes
like it.
down to. So that's that. Now, Daniel, we're an hour in, bud. Let's wrap it up. Any closing thoughts that you have for anyone here?
I think the main thing is how we started the call with, right? In order to succeed, it's not just one thing, right? It's understanding a strategy, having a process on how you ultimately execute on the strategy, and then practicing the execution, right? Rehearsing scripts. That's mainly my final thoughts. Just have a strategy, have a process, and practice the execution.
All right, I'm gonna leave you with this, you guys. Practice, 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 practice. If you don't master the fundamentals, you're never gonna master the higher level stuff. So practice, practice, practice over and over again. Daniel, thank you for sharing your time with us today. You're a gem. I love you. Have a great
Love you,
one, bud.
buddy. See
All
you
right,
soon.
man.
Wait to see
See
you
you
soon.
later.
All right, later. Bye.